Question number 7, Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what discussions have been held over the future of broadcasting in Scotland.
First Minister.
Well, the Scottish Government has had several discussions regarding the future of broadcasting in Scotland through the active involvement in the recent renewal of the BBC Charter. The Culture Secretary met with the BBC Director General just this morning to discuss yesterday's announcements regarding the BBC's plans for Scotland, including the welcome announcement of a new channel for Scotland from autumn of next year. Prior to this, she met with him on the 29th of February, the 18th of August and the 17th of October 2016 to reiterate the Scottish Government's position on how the BBC can deliver better outcomes for audiences and for Scotland's creative sector.
Emma Harper.
Thank you, First Minister, for that answer. I welcome the announcement yesterday as a step in the right direction and heard a bit more detail from the BBC at committee this morning. Does the First Minister agree with me that while it's a good start, it must be properly resourced and that the BBC should be working towards a far fairer share of the licence fee raised in Scotland being invested here, as these plans would leave us lagging behind Wales and Northern Ireland in that respect?
First Minister.
Emma Harper is absolutely right about this, and I would hope it's something we could all unite behind. I unequivocally welcome the announcement yesterday of a BBC Scotland channel. The SNP first called for a separate channel in April 2006 when we made a contribution to the last charter renewal process. So this is something we welcome. But I think everybody would agree that it's vital that it is properly resourced. I welcome the commitments that were made yesterday to resourcing. I particularly welcome the commitments that were made yesterday to the creation of an additional 80 journalist jobs in Scotland at a really difficult time for journalists and for the media generally. I think that's an announcement that all of us should welcome. But we've got to be very firm in saying to the BBC that this channel has to be properly resourced on an ongoing basis. Interestingly, when the Scottish Broadcasting Commission reported in 2009, it estimated back then that a similar channel would cost around £75 million a year, which is actually double than the £30 million announced yesterday. And of course, yesterday's announcement increased the percentage of the licence fee raised in Scotland that is spent in Scotland, and again I absolutely welcome that. But as Emma Harper says, that still does leave that percentage lower than the corresponding percentages in Wales and Northern Ireland. So I absolutely think that the announcements yesterday by the BBC were welcome progress, and I would thank Lord Hall for making those announcements yesterday. But I think all of us now have an interest in making sure that the announcements turn into a successful reality, and for the channel to be successful with high quality content, as we have the talent here to produce, it does necessitate good, solid funding for the long term. So let's all of us unite in making sure that the BBC deliver on that commitment.
Jackson Carlo.
Can I join the First Minister in that welcome? We heard from Lord Hall this morning that 60% of the programming on the new channel will be new commissioning, and together with the initiative of BBC Studios, the question for the Scottish Government is whether we are structured in Scotland to ensure that we can take advantage of that opportunity. There's a widespread belief that Northern Ireland Screen, and the way that the devolved administration is working in partnership with the development agency there, is allowing the independent sector to actually take advantage of the opportunity created, whereas the relationship between the Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise and the Creative Scotland here is not facilitating that. At the same time, there are real concerns over studio capacity here in Scotland, with major studios now being built and commissioned elsewhere in the UK. Will the First Minister ensure that ministers as well take advantage of the opportunity this now creates to ensure that our creative sector in Scotland is able to take advantage of the opportunity that has now been presented?
First Minister.
Well, I agree with much of the thrust of that question, and I genuinely am glad to hear the Tories welcome what was announced yesterday, because when I called for a separate Scottish channel back in 2015 at the Edinburgh Television Festival, Liz Smith said that I was just showing how out of touch I was, and that she didn't want to see millions of pounds of licence fee funds diverted to pay for it. So I'm really glad to hear the conversion of the Scottish Tories. But on to the wider issue that Jackson Carlaw has rightly raised. He'll be aware of the changes we're making and the funding that's been made available in Scotland Scotland to support the screen and the film sector, and it's absolutely vital that we make sure that sector is equipped, and the relationships both with Creative Scotland and with the wider public sector and with Scottish enterprise indeed are the right ones to encourage continued growth. We are seeing lots of success in the film sector, for example, right now. I understand I've got many constituency interests who talk to me about this regularly, the view within the film sector that we need additional studio space. I don't want to say too much more about that just now because some of the proposals are currently subject to planning decisions, but I certainly would agree that I would want to see the provision of studio space in the future. We have state aid issues in terms of our ability to directly fund that, but I think we have here a success story of the Scottish economy that we now have the opportunity to turn into an even bigger success story, and that's why I think we should be enthusiastic and welcome it with both hands.